Hello, I believe we are live. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late there. I had started the live stream and then something wasn't going. So let me know if you can see me, if everything's working. Um, Everything should hopefully be going right now. But I am not seeing the live stream yet. Let me know if you're in the, okay. I think it's working. So let me know in the chat if you're seeing me correctly. Link there. I had started the live stream and then whoop. Okay, some technical difficulties. Apologies for that. But we are live now, and we're celebrating a very special milestone, and that is 50,000 subscribers. And I just cannot thank all of you enough for everything. Because this would not have happened without 50,000 of you, right? And I just cannot thank you enough. That 50,000 is such a mind-boggling number. And I know YouTubers can get up to in the millions of subscribers and everything, but just I went to a conference at one point, had 5,000 people in one room, and that was just a massive amount of people. And here we have 10 times that. That's just so cool. You guys, just thank you so much. Just, I don't like to get mushy or anything, but that just bottom of my heart, thank you so much for that. None of this would have been possible without you, and I'm able to make a living off of this because of you. Just so much gratitude to all of you for making this possible. And should things continue to go well, at the rate they're going currently, I'll hit 100,000 subscribers in a little over a year, probably 14 months or so at the current rate. We'll see. But so many cool things. And so I wanted to do a very special Q&A. I don't really have anything planned for today, which is why you don't see my screen up. But we might dig into some stuff if you have specific questions around anything, and you can ask me any questions you want. They can be AI related, they can be storytelling related, they can be specific software related, they can be personal questions. I'm happy to answer not all personal questions, but most of them that are reasonable. So if you have any of those, please let me know that as well. While you guys are putting all of that in the chat, maybe I'll just go ahead and give an update about how we got here and how the channel got to be where it is. So I started this channel in March of 2023. So coming up on 2 years now. It'll be 2 years this coming March. And that was the first video I put out. This was shortly after ChatGPT came out, just a few months after that. ChatGPT was the first time I had tried AI and was just oh, there's something here. And I remember I was using it to write articles and stuff like that, and wrote 16,000 words in an evening, which is insane. And just a little bit about my journey up to here. I published my first book. Technically, it was December of 2017, but I really did consider it more of a 2018 book. And I published something like 10 novels over a 1-year period. And I'd written them in that period as well. And at one point, it just got, I was hustling too hard that I burned out. And for years after that, I was really struggling with burnout for a very, very long time. And thankfully, I managed to stay in the publishing space and learned a lot because I got a job at Kindlepreneur as the lead content manager. So there's quite a few articles and stuff that you'll see on Kindlepreneur that were either written by me or heavily edited by me. While I was there for about 3 years, and left in February of this year. So a little less than a year ago, and to focus full time on this channel. By then, the channel was almost a year old already, and because when AI came out, I saw a lot of AI bros out there talking about how to write a book with AI. And it was clear to me, as somebody who had written a bunch of books and who had worked in the publishing industry for a while with Kindlepreneur and everything, that these people had no idea what they were talking about. They had clearly never written a book in their life. They were just jumping on the AI train trying to get views. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a video about how to actually do this. Because in my job at Kindlepreneur, I had to sort of be up to date and aware of new emerging trends and technologies and different things. And so I got to work creating a video about exactly how I would do it practically. It was my first video. It's still there. You can go look at it. And it was about an hour long, showing the process of how to write a book with ChatGPT in the practical version of how to do it. And somehow that actually started gaining some traction. And I did a second video. My second video was like, what are the best tools to write a book with? That one's way out of date now because that was almost 2 years ago and a lot has changed. In fact, next week, I'm going to be filming the updated 2025 version of that. And it just sort of took off. And, you know, I'll admit there's definitely some luck there because AI is such a hot topic and people are into that. So I think if I had started a YouTube channel about just like general writing or publishing in general, it probably wouldn't have taken off as quickly. But at the same time, I think my expertise, my background and everything really fed into it. And I get people talking to me a lot about the sort of, I don't know, conversational tone that I have with people and on my videos, and that it feels really authentic. That none of that was really intentional. It's just sort of how I do videos. And so I'm hopeful, or I think that was kind of part of why the channel took off so quickly. But sometimes I really don't understand why. Feel free to give me your opinion in the chat. Because there are other people, like if you guys don't know, Akelo Herod, who runs the YouTube channel Future Fiction Factory, like he is so much more personable than me and such a, I met him just recently at Author Nation in November in Las Vegas. He is such a great guy. Like, I love the guy so much. I don't know why his channel hasn't done like as well, if not better than mine. But yeah, that's just the way it goes. So that's the story so far. And here we are at 50,000 subscribers. I'm just so grateful for all of you for making this possible. And hopefully we can, if every single one of you out there can bring a friend and we can get to 100,000, that'd be awesome. That's the real goal that I have with this channel. Like, I'm not looking for it to be like in the millions or anything, but like at least getting that silver play button would be kind of cool. So anyway, let me start to go through the questions that we have here. And once again, if you're just coming in, I'm taking any and all questions. They can be about AI, they can be about my business, about my writing, about writing advice. It could be about publishing advice. It could be personal questions to me, whatever you want. So let's get into a couple of those. So first of all, we have thanks for all. Okay, well, thank you, Robert, for that kind word. Debbie asks me, tell us about your trip to England. So yes, a couple of months ago, I went to England. And this is the first time I'd gone with my whole family. I've been to England something like 8 times. I really love the culture there. I love the sort of ancient history of the place. And I'd been there many times just by myself. A year or two, like 2 years previous, my wife and I had gone and hiked Hadrian's Wall, which is an 84-mile hike along the Roman Wall. That was a fantastic experience. A struggle, but it was a good experience. And this just a few months ago, I went with my daughter included, as she's 3. And let's just say that was a very different experience from what I was used to. It was a great experience. I went primarily to do some research for some Arthurian books that I'm writing. We went to a lot of Arthurian sites. Glastonbury, we stayed in for a couple of nights. We stayed in a little town called Camelford in Cornwall, and went to a lot of Cornish sites as well. The big one being Tintagel, which is the legendary birthplace of King Arthur. But we also went to a beach down there. We went to so many places. It was a great time. There were some things that were different about this that added to the struggle. Let me just say that. The big one being, of course, carrying around a 3-year-old the whole time. She, Piper is great. She put up, like, I was surprised at how well she put up with the sleep deprivation from our first night there. She didn't get a whole lot of sleep on the plane, and we had to stay up a little bit after we got there. And so we did some fun things, like we went around the Eye of London, and she loved that. But she was like exhausted, and it was a little tough having a 3-year-old, I'll admit. And then this was also the first time that I had driven a car in the UK. So driving on the left side of the road, that actually wasn't as big of an adjustment as I thought it would be. But guys, you guys in the UK, your roads, man, like your little country roads that are really just like, they're not even like a full lane. There's like half a lane, and they're expected to be a 2-way street. And you're like, okay, well, maybe the speed limit's like 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour. No, they're like 60 miles an hour. And oh man, that was a little bit stressful, just going on those roads. I actually got used to the driving on the left side of the road thing really quickly. But those country roads, man, those were, I was like, every part of my focus, every part of my brain was engaged in driving on those roads. Like I couldn't think about anything else. And then parking was also really stressful for me. I think part of that is because of like being on the other side of the car and everything. But your parking spaces are also just like really small in the UK, compared to what I'm used to here in the US. So, and then having, like, you have to know where all the parking places are, because there aren't as many, and you have to like be very strategic about your parking. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. You're probably tired of me talking about it, but it was a great trip overall. We saw a lot of cool things, did a lot of cool things. I'm sure we'll go back. But it was probably, I would say, just a little more stressful than I'm used to because of having a 3-year-old and having to drive and all of that. So, yeah. All right. What else we got? Do you ever run horror slasher specific writing workshops? No. So my genre that I write is fantasy, and I would not really be probably the best person to write workshops on genres that I don't write in myself. I haven't even done regular writing workshops yet. It's something I've toyed with the idea of doing, but I think if I did it genre specifically, I would have to probably hire some people that specialize in different genres to help me run those genres, where I would talk about writing generally, and I would talk about writing in fantasy, but then we'd probably like have, groups, breakout groups for different genres, that sort of thing. So maybe someday in the future. What's a trope that you never like in a story? Ooh, that's a good one. I've actually got an answer to this. I don't like the trope of the villain who, like in season 2 of a show, the villain for season 1 in season 2 suddenly becomes redeemable. I don't really like that. I don't like the redemption of a villain. Sometimes it works. Like I think Loki in the Marvel universe is a good example, but even Loki, I think they've just gone too far with him, just because, and I get it, 'cause people love Tom Hiddleston, but there's just so many shows where like the bad guy suddenly becomes a good guy, and I just think we need more bad guys that are just bad. Like I understand the need to in real life to understand that like anybody can change. That's true. The worst of people can reform. And so I understand that, but like I think sometimes they're just bad people. And we need to have stories that emphasize that. And there's room for both. But I think the redeeming of the villain is like an overdone trope that I'm not really a fan of. Oh, thank you, Safa. That's really kind. Thank you so much for those kind words. When you offer a book for sale, do you use written with the help of AI or just written by your name? So there's two parts to this. Amazon asks you to disclose if you used AI in your writing. And when I'm uploading a book, I do disclose accurately how I used AI. I'm honest there. But Amazon is not looking for, like, they're not going to label your book as AI written or AI assisted. I think unless they are legally required to do so. I think they're just gathering information because Amazon just released a whole slew of new models, which I haven't done a video on yet because, like, there's been just so much going on. And they're also like, but Amazon's very pro AI, so I'm not worried about them trying to like outing me as an AI author per se. When it comes to the book itself, like in the book, most of the time, like 95% of the time, I will not disclose the use of AI. I don't think it's necessary because as far as I'm concerned, it's still my book. It's my vision. It's my story. I have to put my stamp of approval on every single paragraph. And, there are people that are using ghostwriters that are not disclosing that they used a ghostwriter. You can feel about that however you want, but it's certainly an accepted practice. And AI, I would say, is even more mine than if I was working with a ghostwriter. So I still consider it my work. It's my vision. Now, of course, if I used AI, I didn't validate anything, I just let it go and didn't really even read through the book, then I wouldn't feel as much ownership over it. But I think if you're using AI properly, you will create a book that is absolutely yours and according to your vision. You just used a different technique to actually get the words on the paper rather than the mechanical act of typing it out or writing it by hand or whatever you do. So no, I do not disclose it other than to Amazon privately when I'm uploading the book. Because if I didn't do that, then I'd be in violation of Amazon's terms of service. And if they found out, then they could ban me. They're not going to ban me for disclosing it and being honest. Okay. All right. Can I do a new video on the super prompt? Sure. But here's the thing. I don't use the super prompt anymore. I'll use similar techniques sometimes. But now that I'm using tools like Raptorwrite or Novel Crafter or even Sudowrite, they're kind of doing the super prompt for you on the back end in their prompts. And it makes it a lot quicker and easier and reduces the friction. So I don't have to assemble a super prompt for every single chapter because it just gets done automatically. So it's important to know the theory behind a super prompt because that's the essentially what all of these AI companies are doing when they're creating tools specifically around a certain task like writing, is they are creating super prompts essentially on the back end. So I think it's important to know the theory behind it, but I actually don't, that's not the way I encourage writing these days. So thank you, Space. We got the developer of Novel Crafter in the house. Thank you very much for the kind words. Luna, thank you so much for your kind words. I'm not a writer, but you make me feel like I can be. Thank you so much. That's my goal. Oh, you know what, John? I haven't been in the Discord for the for Muse in a while. I'm not a Discord person. I try to keep up with AI stuff because everyone's in Discord there. But it's just not for me. So I sometimes lose it. So yeah, I will try to be at that meeting I've got another meeting today. So hopefully it doesn't conflict. If you guys haven't heard, there is a new model that Sudowrite is developing called Muse. It's in beta right now. I'm in the beta. A couple of other people are. When it works really well. I'll just say that. It's got a few little issues. I'll do a whole couple of videos about it probably. But not yet because it's kind of embargoed. But yeah, I mean, it's public knowledge that it exists and it's really good. Thank you, AA, for your kind words. Thank you, Terry. I should really like screenshot all of these comments because these are like great testimonials. You guys are awesome. Okay, so Fendula. I tried buying a book cover a few days ago from Get Covers. The $35 offer only uses stock photos. And when I asked for something more specific, they couldn't accommodate my request. Yeah, when you're paying that little for a book cover, it's going to be all stock photos and stock manipulation. Now, they do a good job. And what's more important is that they understand the genre better than you, which is really important if you want to sell the book, right? Book cover is not a place to have like a image of a specific scene in your book. Think of it as a poster to sell your book. It is a selling technique thing. And so for $35, I wouldn't expect much. Now their sister site, Miblart, is a little more expensive. It's still going to be, at least at their lower tiers, it's still going to be stock photo manipulation, but it'll be more advanced stock photo manipulation. And then for even more money, you can get custom illustrations and things. I find them to be probably the best of the bunch for price to quality ratio, if that makes sense. They're very affordable for what you get. And so if you really want something more specific, I would go with Miblart. It is more expensive than Get Covers. They're the same company, same parent company. But you just, you have the different tiers and you expect what you pay for. So, all right. Okay. Thank you, James. I appreciate constructive criticism as well. What would you recommend for someone who doesn't have $200 budget for a book cover? Get Covers. I would go with Get Covers, or do a lot of research in your genre so that you really understand what are the tropes of a book cover in that genre, because there's certain design things that happen. And then use a program like Ideogram to get your initial cover. And then maybe spend some time in Canva or something working on the type. That's where most authors fall flat, is with the type, the typesetting, the lettering, because there's usually specific tropes around lettering for each genre. So pay close attention to what those tropes are. You might want to invest in a better font. Especially if you write something like fantasy or science fiction, the best fonts are things you have to pay for. They're usually not that expensive, but yeah, you'll want to look into that. I would either go with an ideogram based cover, or go to Get Covers and get the $35 option. So, or just, I hate to say this, but save up, get a side hustle, do whatever you can, because again, you get what you pay for, and everything here is an investment. The better the better your book looks, and the better your book is, like like investing in editing and stuff like that. Like, it's going to make it more likely to make money the more work you put into it and the more money you put into it. So it's an investment. It's not always going to pay off, but if you can't spend the money on it, then you need to spend extra time on it to really polish it and make it good. Okay. Congrats, I've written chapter 1 and am starting Novel Crafter with chapter 2. Do I need to add beats to the chapter 1 outline if I already wrote the chapter? And how do I prompt to continue what's written? Okay, so that's a little tricky. As long as you've got chapter 1 in Novel Crafter, it should be able to read chapter 1 as it's constructing chapter 2. So no, you don't need the beats. If you're using just the default prompt that Novel Crafter comes with, or one that's similar, it should be looking at the old text from chapter 1 so that it continues writing in a similar chapter. What I would do is I would have just a brief summary of that chapter included in the plan section of Novel Crafter, so it knows that that's what happened in chapter 1. Because it'll also look at that. There's a part of the prompt called the story so far, where it'll look through the summaries of each chapter. But you have to put those summaries there into the plan section, so you make sure you do that. Debbie says, I won't mention about your return home. So speaking of the return home from my trip to England, I had a massive infection that happened after I returned home in a very uncomfortable place. Let's just put it that way. I was trying to manage it at home, and when I took some antibiotics that my doctor prescribed, it just wasn't enough, and ended up going to the hospital for a couple of days. But everything worked out okay. But I am grateful for modern medicine, because that infection might have killed me had modern medicine not be a thing. Like, if this was 200 years ago, it would have been bad. So, yeah. Let's see. Have you ever written a short story anthology or been interested in writing one? Could be interesting use of AI as well. Yeah, I've thought about it. I don't really want, like, if I did short stories, it would be just me. In fact, I have written some short stories, a short story anthology of just my stuff, called The Arthur Tales. You can check that out if you're interested in Arthurian fantasy. I thought about doing one, but it would only be my stuff. And I don't really want to do an anthology of other people's stuff, because that just brings in a whole bunch of legal issues that I just don't want to worry about right now. So I haven't thought about doing that specifically. Gary asks, thanks for introducing me to Novel Crafter. Is there a way to save my format preferences in write mode? I'm not entirely certain what you mean by format preferences. Feel free to write into Novel Crafter about that, or maybe clarify a little bit what you're talking about in the chat. I'll see if I can. But yeah, thank you, Thomas, for your kind words. What do you think about Sanderson's writing? You've sometimes referred to him in various videos about writing, because in my opinion, he writes very averagey and the dialogues are downright awful. Gotta say, I just straight up disagree with you on that. I think his stuff is really great. He isn't the kind of writer that is all about the eloquence of the prose. You want that? George R.R. Martin is a better example of that, or any literary writer. But I've heard him talk about writing style before, and one of the things he says is that there's two different opinions about writing style. One is that a writer should have their own, like, unique voice, and he disagrees with that. He thinks each character should have their own unique voice and sound differently. And the gold standard of that is actually Robert Jordan. If you're reading Robert Jordan, every character, even though it's written in third person limited, not first person, every time you read a chapter from a character's point of view, it just, you know exactly who that character is just by the way they see the world. And I think Brandon Sanderson's really good at that too. Maybe not as good as Robert Jordan was, but he's pretty good. And I don't know what you're talking about with the dialogue. I think his dialogue is great. But I guess it's just, everything's objective, I suppose. And we all have different opinions. In fact, one of the things Brandon Sanderson says is, like, you could make the best seafood dish in the world and he would not eat it just because he doesn't like seafood. And I agree to a certain extent. Sometimes it's just not our taste, but I think he's a good writer. I think he's stronger in plotting and in creating very satisfying payoffs. So if you watch his lectures, you'll hear his take on promises and progress and payoffs. Promises being the things at the beginning of the novel that you're kind of promising, like, we're going to pay this off later, like a character's arc, or I don't know, you're working with something and making the promise that, like, this is going to be important later, like Chekhov's gun, basically, if you've heard of that concept. And so his endings are like legendarily, is that a word? Famously, there we go. Really satisfying. And I think that's where he has built most of his fame, has been because of his extremely satisfying endings and paying off all of the things that we've been leading to up until that point. And I hope to one day be so good as he is at that sort of thing. I try. But of course, he's got more experience than me. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so AA says James Patterson uses 50 ghostwriters. Using AI is more fair than that. I mean, I wouldn't say one is better than the other. It's just a different way of doing things. But I would say that AI feels more personal, like it's more me than working with a ghostwriter. Even if I'm working very closely and collaboratively with a ghostwriter, like I'm giving them the outline and proving everything they write, I still feel like what they're doing is a little bit more removed from me than writing with AI is. Granted, if I'm writing it myself without AI, that's even more mine. Like there is a scale of how much I feel personally invested in a book based on how it was written. And I actually do all of those things. I actually work with some ghostwriters that are working with me right now, and I write stuff with AI, and I write stuff myself. And it's just a different way of doing things, and there's a different, I don't know how to describe it, but there's just a different feeling of ownership for each type. So this is why I think that writing books the traditional way is not going to go away, because there's still value in doing it that way. But there's going to have to be kind of a reason for it in the future, because eventually we're going to get to a point where pretty much everyone's using AI for everything. So yeah. All right. I'd like to get a deep dive on your structure. You mentioned beat scenes, and I still don't get it very well. Thank you for all your hard work and useful content. Yeah, so when I talk about beats, usually what I'm talking about is just a detailed outline of the scene. Like when we get to the scene beat stage, a lot of people don't even call it that anymore. I'm still sort of stuck in the past. But really, it's just a detailed summary of the scene. So if you have just like a couple of sentences explaining what the scene is, that's not a scene beat. You want to expand it to a very detailed outline of what happens in the scene, and that's what a scene beats are. Now, if you're talking about my specific structure, I've got the 40 chapter outline, which you can get for free, by the way. I think there's a link in the description below if you want to sign up for that. My 40 chapter outline I designed specifically, well, for a couple of reasons. One of which was because I wanted something that would work easily with AI. I could give it the exact structure that I need so that it could tell me, so it could help me flesh out the scene quicker and easier. But I also, it's the kind of thing that I wish that I had early on when I was starting. Just a simple, like, just follow these 40 chapters and you'll be fine. There is of course flexibility. You don't have to follow everything precisely, but I think for beginner authors, it's nice to have a very clear structure to follow. And I think that this is exactly the sort of thing that I would have wanted for myself. So that's the 40 chapter plot outline. It's divided into 4 acts. Act 1, Act 2A, Act 2B, and Act 3. They all kind of have a different purpose, and each one has 10 chapters. And some chapters you might, depending on the story, you might need to merge some of them. Some of them you might want to split into more chapters. There's that flexibility, but it's just nice to have something that you can follow. So that's what that is. And I'll be sure to do more on that in the future. I'm actually developing a course about it right now. So we'll have that available at some point in the future. Alrighty. Chris asks, is it going to beat Novelcrafter? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. If you're referring to Sudowright's Muse model, remember, we're talking about language models here, not the tools around the language models, not the wrapper tools. Novelcrafter is a wrapper tool that can incorporate all of the different large language models. Sudowright's new model is a large language model. It's not a new tool, right? But at least for now, it is exclusive to Sudowrite, which makes sense to me because it's their model. They developed it. They're not going to allow their competitor Novel Crafter to use it, at least at first. Because they could also make money by making it public so anybody could use it, but we'll see. So yeah, so it looks like we are talking about the Muse model here. I'm a little behind in the questions, so forgive me for that. But John says that it supposedly fixed it going off the rails. Okay, so the new version of it, cool, because that was its biggest flaw. It would go off the rails pretty quickly, and if you change the temperature so that it wasn't going off the rails, it would get to be a little bit more like AI-ish, more AI-isms and everything like that. Thank you, Mac, for your kind words there. Thank you, Sino. You've been inspiring for us way before anyone else. Thank you. I know you don't like AI for editing a full manuscript, but how do you feel with these new AI models like O1 Pro that have a lot of memory? Yeah, it's not necessarily about the memory. This is why I don't like AI for editing. It's not because it can't view your whole novel at once, because it can. It's that it's not actually telling you real things. It views your novel and it says, okay, we're supposed to provide a developmental edit here. Here are some things that sound like a developmental edit. It's not actually analyzing your text and from that analysis creating a proper edit of your book, a proper analysis of the book. It's just creating words that sound like a good developmental edit. So it'll say things like, you've got great characters here, and one of the things you might want to do is deepen these characters' relation, just very high level, not really useful stuff. You can kind of get around this with extremely detailed prompts that are asking it to look for very specific things, but those are hard to come by. But that said, O1 is the best one that I've seen at doing it, and I want to play with it a little bit more before I really have any definitive videos about how to do it. But in terms of like its ability to think, it's not really thinking, but it's mimicking the process of thought is what makes it better at editing. But I still feel that AI, it's a generative technology. It's not really an analysis technology. It is better at creating words than editing them. And so it should be used as such. There will probably be tools that pop up that are more specifically designed to do editing and do it well. We'll get to that at some point. But I don't think we're quite there yet. We're getting close. O1 is the closest thing we've had. Do you have any recommendations for line editing workflows where AI rewrites my writing and I use ideas from it to edit my own? Every tool seems to focus on having the AI making changes directly. Yeah, same reasons that I've talked about already. For line editing, I would go with AutoCrit. It's not an AI tool for the line editing, but it will highlight instances where you're using words or phrases that might raise a red flag in a line editing sense, like cliche phrases or phrases that are telling and not showing. It can highlight those for you, and then you can go through them one by one and edit it accordingly. That's probably the best you're going to get, at least for a while. Debbie, great question. What are your plans for the story hacker community? I feel like you're what's that phrase? Because I feel like you know the answer to this, but you're just like bringing it up so I can share it to the rest of the group. So the story hacker community, link down below if you're interested. There's a lot of new changes coming in the near future. I'll tell you some of them. The big one that's actually going to probably be happening in the next week. It had better happen in the next week because then I'm going on vacation. Not vacation, but the Christmas holidays, going up to visit family. I guess that's a vacation. guess it depends on your family, but for me, it's a vacation. Anyway, the big thing that happening in the next week is that we are migrating to a new platform called Skool, Skool, because I've come to understand in the year plus, year and a month since I started the community, that it is more of a community-based business than a course-based business. It was basically like some courses and stuff that I put together. And I quickly realized that that was just like 20% of the value, and that the main value came from the community aspect. So part of that is me going live inside of the community and interacting with people directly. Part of that is the value that members provide each other, because when you're paying for software, you automatically filter out a lot of people who aren't really into it. You get the people that are the cream of the crop, that are really serious about writing, and those people have actually quite a lot of value for each other, and all of that. So it's a community. I realized it's a community-based business, and Skool is a community-based platform. It's basically Facebook groups if Facebook groups were actually good. And both the free version of my community and the paid version are going to be migrating to Skool. So now when I'm like asking you to go sign up for my email list to get my free stuff, that'll actually be inside of Skool soon, for the free people. And if you want to pay, you have to get access to a second community. That'll be the Story Hacker Gold Group. And so that's the big change number one. The other big change is that I have been working, I have talked to 3 different people so far. One who's a graphic designer, one who is a developmental editor, who I've actually worked with personally on some of my own books, and really knows their stuff. And also with another person who's going to act as kind of an accountability coach. And all 3 of these people, and possibly more in the future, are going to be coming in and providing additional value to this membership. And so like the graphic designer person is going to be talking about book covers and using AI art. He really understands his AI art even more so than I do. Like he can tell you how to set up Stable Diffusion on your own computer if you've got like a gaming computer that could handle it. He could tell you all kinds of stuff. He's going to be doing analyses of the different genres out there of book covers, so you can understand what makes a genre look the way it does. Lots of cool stuff. The developmental editor is going to get into more of like the actual storytelling part of things, like what makes a good story. So less on the AI side of things and more on like what is actually a good story. And he's probably going to be doing something, we're still figuring it out exactly what the curriculi will look like, but he might do some analysis of like your first page and stuff, like right there on the calls that they're going to have. Lots of cool things. And then we'll also have an accountability coach, so that at the beginning of the week, you can come into this group and say, hey, this is my plan for the week. This is how I did last week on my old goals. And there'll be several sessions so as to account for different time zones and things like that, to do that. So you can come in and really make your commitments, because my ultimate goal is to get you to actually finish the book, right? That's my main thing. So all of that's happening here soon, probably January or February. And once that's in place, the price will be going up because of all of those people coming in. There's just a need to increase the price to handle all of the people that are going to be coming through. So yeah, so that's what's happening. A lot of big stuff happening in Story Hackers right now. And if you want to get it at the current price, you can do so, and you will be grandfathered in. So the price won't go up for you. That's why I'm recommending people get in now, because the price is going to go up in a month or so. And I'll let you know exactly when it's going up once I figure that out. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Gary, for your clarification. Every time I log in, I have to reset the paragraph spacing, font alignment, etc. to my preference. It would be nice to shorten the startup routine by having the app remember. Yeah. I would just reach out to their support and see if they can do that for you. That sounds like a good feature update that they could do. I'm not aware of any way to, I just use the default, so I'm not aware of any particular way to do that. Wow. Thank you so much, Evolution DL1. Thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you, Andre, for your kind words. Thank you, Chris. Says, you seem to be the only one willing to help the newbies. I appreciate that. That is kind of my goal. Oh, okay. Great question from Phoenix Tail. Says, been following you for a few months now. Love your output. I've got Novel Crafter, AutoCrit, Pro Writing Aid, and Atticus. What would you say is the best workflow between these, would you say? Yeah, this is one of my pain points. I would love it if these tools could talk to each other. That's not really the way business works these days. Most people either try to be an all-in-one platform, which ends up being too much work, and they end up not being good enough, or they just specialize in one specific thing and do that one thing very well. Novel Crafter does AI writing really well. AutoCrit does like line editing stuff really well. Atticus does formatting really well. Pro Writing Aid does spelling and grammar really well. But none of them really do all the things. And I know several of them want to, but that takes a lot of work. And I find that people often get more value when you have a program that is specialized in a specific thing. But then what that means is that you have to work with all the different programs. So the best workflow, I would say, start in Novel Crafter, get your book written in Novel Crafter, take that over to AutoCrit, and you can do, like, Novel Crafter has an export feature, I believe, where you can get all of that, and then AutoCrit has an import feature. That'll save you some time, although there's usually some weird formatting errors that happen whenever that happens. It's just the way it works. Do all your editing in AutoCrit. Use the Pro Writing Aid plugin. So Pro Writing Aid has a plugin so it can be used across the web in Google Docs or whatever it is that you're using. Use that plugin specifically, like you can use it in AutoCrit. So when you're in AutoCrit, use the Pro Writing Aid plugin to handle spelling and grammar specifically, and use AutoCrit for everything else. And then once you're done in there, export that and then import it into Atticus. Again, you'll probably have some like formatting errors from that process just because there's no really perfect way to do it. And then fix it up in Atticus until you're happy with it. The formatting process is usually really, really simple in Atticus. Atticus is always my final step. I get everything ready. And then from Atticus, you can export it specifically to be uploaded to Amazon KDP and go from there. That would be my process. I know it's a lot. Yeah, but that's really the best we got right now. All right. Is my wife a writer as well? Nope, she is not. I don't think she has any interest in writing books. She is, however, my #1 fan. And she's told me to tell all of you, sorry, none of you can be my #1 fan. And she's right. She is my #1 fan. And she has been incredibly amazing and supportive to me over the years. Even before I'd seen anything close to success. When I had a book series back in the day, I took out like a $5,000 loan just so I could have marketing money to promote it. And then the whole thing tanked. And I had to repay that loan over time, and it was painful, and it was not great. By the way, don't take out loans for this. Doesn't matter how confident you think you are, just don't. Based on my own experience, like I would not feel comfortable recommending that at all. Just put in the time instead of money. And throughout all that, she was so supportive. And, eventually got to where we are today. And I just could not be more grateful to her. So she is the most amazing supportive person I could possibly ask for. But no, she is not a writer. She's not anywhere interested in that kind of thing. So, but she is my #1 fan. Sorry. All right. Thank you, Gabo, for your kind words. My question, okay, so this is from Piccoon TV. My question is, I have my website, I do serialized release. True that I only have a few chapters for 3 books in total, but no traffic at all. I have difficulty to figure out the SEO. Any suggestions? Funny enough, this is exactly what I did when I first started out. I wrote a serial and I released it on my website. Understand that serial is not going to get any traffic on its own. SEO is not a good strategy for fiction. Let me rephrase that. SEO is not a good strategy because fiction by itself is not something that people are searching for. Like, people are not going to be putting in a keyword that your chapter would be the answer for. Does that make sense? Because my background's in SEO. I should have known better when I first tried this out, but you're not going to get SEO for that. The key to SEO for writing, and this is a lot of work, okay, but this is how you do it. The key to SEO for fiction writing is that for every fiction genre, there are a handful of related nonfiction genres. So for instance, for fantasy, the related nonfiction genres would be information about swords or castles or ancient history, like medieval history, or potentially on world building, like creating magic systems and other things like that that are related to fantasy. Those are things that people are searching for. These nonfiction topics are things that people search for. And so you would need to create content around these related nonfiction topics, and then in those articles, promote the serial that you're doing or promote your book or whatever the case is. That's how you do it. That's really the only way to do it with SEO. I would almost say serialized storytelling on, I've got something on my shirt there. Serialized storytelling on a website, it's probably not the best idea, to be completely frank and honest with you. And I hope you don't mind that I am being blunt there. It's probably not the best idea. For a serialized storytelling, I'd say you have 2 options. You could do it through serialized story platforms, one of which just got shut down. Kindle Vella was Amazon's serialized story platform, and it's just it's winding down now. I don't think you can publish new stuff. Or there are others. I think Radish is one. There's a bunch of others out there where you could do it, and you might gain some traffic that way. Or you can publish it on Amazon as a full book. You don't necessarily have to do it as a serial. You probably honestly get more traction out of that than publishing it as a serial. Or you could create a Patreon type thing and attract people, try to get people in the Patreon and do it there. But trying to put it out for free on a website and expect people to just come in and discover it is not viable. So sorry if any of that was a little bit like tough love, but I went through the exact same experience, so I feel like I know what I'm talking about on this particular thing. All right. We got a question here. It's been a while since I've seen you do a pseudo-write video. I'm assuming that they haven't brought any new features to the platform. No, so we were just talking about Muse, which is a new model that they're introducing that I am beta testing right now. It's true that I haven't done a lot of videos about them because I haven't been too happy with what they're doing, and I prefer Novel Crafter. But I will say this new model that they're doing is good, and it is the reason I wouldn't discount them entirely. And so I do have a video coming out about that model as soon as they will let me publish it. And following that, I will be doing more videos about pseudo-write, because they've kind of gotten themselves back in the game with this model, in my opinion. And so you've seen me I've done like full course videos that go like from start to finish, everything to know about a certain thing. I'll be doing one of those probably early in next year about pseudo-write. And yeah. Okay. What do you think of these local Ollama AI models run on your computer, and you can do and you can train your data? I haven't done a lot of videos about that, but I specifically got a high-end gaming computer so I could play around with stuff like that. So I definitely plan to in the future. It's definitely a good way to go for the smaller models, at least. John says, I like O1 for planning and plotting and AutoCrit for editing. Yep. That seems like a good strategy. Wow, thank you, David, for the kind words there. Patrick, thank you for your kind words. I didn't know, so I haven't done any videos about comic book stuff, so I'm glad that you were able to find value in them for comic book writing as well. I should do a video about writing comic book scripts with AI. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm sure I could do a lot of research on it and get something that's decent. Billy asks, with the pace that AI is getting better, how long until you think an entire book can be created with little to no input from us, where it would be indistinguishable from a human written book? 5 years, roughly. Granted, I don't know how much that's going to be useful. I think people connect with people. And if an AI has just written a book, granted, the quality of the book matters, but if an AI can just spit out a book like that, it just makes the quality of the book meaningless. And it will then be more about the interactions that a reader has with the author. I actually just had a conversation with a university professor about this. We had like a whole interview thing that he recorded for his university. And that's one of the things that we talked about, like what happens when the value of being able to write a book goes down to almost zero, with AI being able to produce these things with the click of a button. And I believe the answer lies in human connection, ironically, right? Because in an AI saturated world, it's the human connections that are going to matter more than ever. When I was in my own university experience, one of my favorite professors that I had talked about this, and this is long before AI, but he talked about how the rise of the internet and automated processes have actually created a increase in value on human created stuff. So at the time, we were talking about things like Etsy and the rise of platforms like Etsy, where people are more interested in stuff that was handmade and are willing to spend more money on something they could get for real cheap on Amazon. They're willing to spend more money on something that was handmade. I think, and that's because of the human connection. And so I think anything that has more of a human connection is going to matter more in the future. The reason I did this channel as with my face and everything, because I saw some channels, even channels that were doing well, just no face at all, just someone talking and explaining and like showing the tutorials and stuff as they were going. And faceless YouTube channels are really popular these days. But I feel like having a face is more important now in the age of AI than it has ever been before, because we can make that human connection, even if it's across YouTube and across the screen. We can make that human connection in a way that we can't with a faceless YouTube channel or something like that. And so what does that translate to books? I don't know necessarily. I am in the process of creating. So I talked about my Story Hacker community, which is a community-based business. I am in the process of adapting that idea to also work for fiction. And I'm very interested in the possible potential of that, because I think having a community that is official, that I foster for my books and my universe, my fantasy universe that I've set up, I think that is going to be actually where money could potentially be made in the future, rather than the sale of books. Because I think in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be way more difficult to sell books. It's going to be a little bit like the music industry. Most musicians do not make their money from Spotify, right? They make a trickle of money through Spotify. And so most of them make their money from in-person events, from concerts and gigs and different things. And I think we've got to be thinking in those terms. How would you make money as a musician, and how could we translate those ideas to writing fiction, writing books? So that's just me waxing a little philosophical for you there. I think we are looking at some changes. But I think if we're on top of those changes, we can, there's still musicians making money. It's maybe a little harder now than it used to be. Maybe. I'm not actually so sure because it's so much more widely accessible today. It's easier to get started as a musician because anybody can do it. You don't have to go through the gatekeepers of these big music industries and things. But that said, the industry as a whole, I think, has been suffering. And I think we're going to see something very similar with the rise of AI in the publishing industry. We've already seen it start a little bit since the rise of self-publishing. It's made the whole environment a lot more competitive and have made these big traditional publisher gatekeepers less relevant. So we'll see. All right. I keep going through the questions here. You guys keep writing these in faster than I can get through them. What do I think a normal novel output rate will be in the future with AI use? It depends on you. Personally, I would not do anything faster than what you could read. There are going to be people out there that are producing more books, like a book a day. I can't read a book a day. So I don't think it should be faster than that. But there are going to be people that do it. But yeah. Thank you, Kat, for all of your kind words there. Thank you, Alex. That's amazing. Go you. What do you think about the new Canvas version of ChatGPT? It's fine. I don't like Claude had something similar. Canvas does a little bit more than what Claude's version does. And it's fine. If you're using a tool like Novel Crafter or Raptorite or even Sudowrite, it kind of negates the reason for, like, you don't really need Canvas. I've almost found it to be more of an annoyance than anything else. Because sometimes I just want the answer. I don't want it to like break off into this new thing. But it is nice to be able to modify things inside of the Canvas window, which, by the way, you could have done already inside of the API. Who knows? Yeah, don't take loans unless you have constant income to pay back. Yep. I had to pay it back over 2-3 years, $5,000, because that's all I could afford to pay back over 3 years. At the time. Have you used the new GP? Here's another Canvas question. Yeah, I don't know if it alone is a good reason to subscribe to the Plus plan. I actually canceled my ChatGPT Plus plan because I wasn't using it too much. I resubscribed with the new advanced voice feature and the O1 model and all of that. I felt like I needed to just to talk about it. But I use Claude more commonly. And as a chatbot, I prefer that. Generally speaking, my recommendation is you have one chatbot that is paid and one specialist tool for writing, of which there's really only 3 big ones. There's Sudowrite, Novel Crafter, and Raptorite. I'd pick one of those 3. And I'd pick a chatbot to kind of be a catch-all for everything else. Right? All right. Yeah, I haven't done a video about Canvas yet. Honestly, it's because it's kind of meh for me. I really don't. I think people are blowing a big fuss over it and how cool it is. I do not see how useful it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't actually see it. I think it's an overhyped tool. That's my opinion on it. But I could see how it would be useful if you don't have a specialized tool like Raptorite or Novel Crafter. Maybe it could be helpful in that particular case. Oh, there you go, Gary. Space Motion is in the chat. So you can talk to her about it. All right. Oh, I'm getting close to the end here, you guys. So if you want me to keep going, you better ask more questions. Get personal. I'll most likely answer them. Maybe. Awesome job, Jaristotle. Great name, by the way. Yeah. So Robert, so here, I don't want to talk too much about Muse because I am kind of under an embargo, but from what I understand, there's actually several models that they're using. And from what I understand, they are like not just an average fine-tuned model, like a big fine-tuned model based on both Mistral models and Llama models. I may be wrong in that because I don't exactly know. But I was told that there are actually multiples of them depending on a use case. And they've been trained on actual fiction, fine-tuned, but like to a massive scale on actual fiction that they have permission to use. And it works pretty well. Yeah, but see, here's the thing. So you say, so will Muse be based on an AI model? So yes, I believe so. I think it's a fine tune of Mistral models or Llama models. So then the rest of your question is, so then others could train an AI to be more fiction oriented. Hopefully Novel Crafter can do that as well. From right now, at least, Sudowrite has their own model that they're including in their own platform, but Novel Crafter does not have their own models. They connect you to Open Router, which brings in all of its models. In theory, if Sudowrite wanted to make their model public and it was available via Open Router, then you could get it in Novel Crafter that way. I don't know if they're going to be doing that. I talked to the developers and they told me it's an idea they've been toying with. But I personally, from a business perspective, I would not do that, at least not for like a while, right? I would wait. But that is a potential revenue source for them because every time that the model is used, they could earn money from that. I don't know. It's up to them. But I know like we got the developer of Novel Crafter in the chat right now, so I want to be careful what I say. Because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes in all of these companies. I know a little bit, but not everything. And I feel like it takes Sudowrite has investor capital money backing them in some cases, and that allows them to sometimes do more expensive things like create a whole new model. I don't necessarily know if that's something that the people at Novel Crafter have thought about or would be capable of doing. Same goes for Raptor, right? Maybe Space, maybe let me know in the chat or privately. But I think it's a good move on Sudowrite's part because I feel like it's something that they exclusively could do. But we'll see. We'll see. I think we're likely to see other companies popping up doing models that are specifically geared to write fiction. We'll see more of that. In fact, I think there's a potential future where you could have like a specific model for every genre, because each genre has different tones and things, or even you have models built around a specific vocal style. And so then the job becomes of choosing which style is relevant for which character and all of that. Who knows? But right now, this is the only model I know of that has been specifically trained to write fiction and do it well. So that's one of the cool things about it. All right. John says, I've been using O1 to break down a chapter to scenes, then comic book panels, then take the prompts and run them through Midjourney and finish it in Photoshop so they create a comic book as an extra. Yeah, actually, that's really cool. I have something similar that I'm doing for a young reader book, not a comic book, but a young reader book that includes illustrations. Yeah. John says, I love ChatGPT voice and they just added video. Yeah, I love those things as well. I love the ChatGPT voice. I don't use it as often as I need to. I really want them to incorporate ChatGPT's advanced voice feature into something like Google Home or Alexa or one of those things, so I can just say, hey Alexa, and then it would actually respond to me using the ChatGPT voice feature. Like that would be awesome. it sounds like super first world problem for me to say this, but the fact that I have to like open the app and then turn on the advanced voice feature is like too too much work. I would much prefer it if I could just like say, "Hey Alexa," and then, or "Hey ChatGPT," and it would talk to me. But I'm sure we're not far from that being the case. But yeah, it would be nice. How come we can't send super chats? Because I haven't set that up. I'm getting to the point where I should, but so far I can really answer all of the questions. Most of the time, I have the time to do that. So yeah, I just haven't enabled that. But since we are over 50,000 subscribers now, and there's like, I usually get like 100 concurrent viewers on these live streams, it's getting to a point where I might need to enable it. So yeah. Has anyone asked about writing mythology? I am late to this show. No, but I'm curious about your question because I write mythology-based fiction. I'm not. So you're talking about writing like new mythologies or writing about existing mythologies? Let me know. Oh. Aetherloft. How do you get over the feeling of imposter syndrome when you are trying to become a writer? Oh boy, you don't. I still deal with it quite a lot. It's just expect to have it. Expect to manage it. Understand that it's largely in your head. Most people do not, and this doesn't sound like a good thing, but most people do not care about you enough to actually label you as an imposter. The more famous you get, the more people you'd have doing that. But everybody deals with imposter syndrome, and it is mostly a figment of your imagination. I was actually talking to Becca Syme. If you don't know her, she's like the designated therapist for authors. She's written a whole bunch of books. The first one she wrote was a big hit. It's called Dear Writer, or Dear Author, Dear Writer, You Need to Quit, I believe was the name of the title. Yeah, it's a great book, and she's written other books about burnout and stuff like that. And I was talking to her at a conference recently, talking about my own imposter syndrome with this channel and stuff. Because there was a time when I was branching out to some other topics about publishing and writing books, and not just talking about AI. And for some reason, those videos got a lot more pushback from people saying, like, who are you to talk about this stuff? Like, where are your books? And you clearly aren't making, multiple six figures on your book. So why should I listen to you? And I was just like, yeah, I could probably have more experience in these things before I talk about them. And she said something that really resonated with me. She said, you don't have to have experience. You just need to be right. And I thought, ooh, that's good. Because my experience at Kindlepreneur has taught me a lot of things that I don't necessarily have experience with, but I know from having observed the community and other writers that I am right in some of those things, even though I haven't done them myself. And I thought that was great. Like, so let that be a lesson to you in imposter syndrome. You don't necessarily have to have experience and be the best in the world at that thing that you're talking about or writing about. You just have to be right. So, okay. All right. Oh, thank you, Joanna. Says, you are the most honest YouTuber. My daughter and I love your videos. Thank you. I love you and your daughter. You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching. Debbie, great question. What would you have, what would you do differently, if anything, if you were to start today? Honestly, not that much. I feel like the path that I've taken has been exactly what I needed at exactly the right time. And I know, like, not to get too woo-woo here, but if any of you have read books about manifestation and creating the life you love, like, I feel like that's sort of happened. There have been challenges, of course, but those challenges have been exactly what I needed to learn, right? So yeah, I'm not sure I would do anything differently at this point. if you want to know like my step-by-step process for new people that are just starting out, that's actually all in my membership. Not to just toot my own horn there or anything, but I do have it laid out in a step-by-step 5-phase process, whereby if the end of it, you'll not only have a book written, you'll have a reader magnet written, you'll have people on your email list, and you'll have everything you need to publish and market the book. So I guess that's the closest thing I would say. If I were to start over today, I would basically take that exact process to start with. Thomas says, I find that the writing part went quickly. It's the editing and keeping continuity that is taking forever to get right in my novel. My novel ended up being so large, I've had to split it into 3 books. What are your thoughts on best practices on how best to proceed? Right now, as I've mentioned already, I don't think AI is great at editing. And so for me too, this is the largest part of the process. And I just consider it part of the writing process. Like until I've done one solid initial edit on everything that the AI gives me, I do not consider the first draft done. And I would also make sure you're going through it as you write it. So don't just write the whole thing all at once, because you're going to end up with more continuity errors if you do that. Edit it as you go, and then you'll have fewer continuity errors. And it'll also probably write a little better because it's viewing what you've already written. So yeah, that would be my process. And then if you don't have a lot of time and you've got some money, invest in an editor. And then from there, just go through the process, the regular editing process, basically. That'd be how I go. If you can't afford to do that, try to find some beta readers to give you just their opinions. They're not going to necessarily give you good writing advice, but they can sometimes say, hey, I didn't really like this scene, or I was confused by this part. And if more than one of them say that about the same scene, then you might want to take a closer look at it. I'm still seeking, so Nikki says, I'm still seeking a model that can do complex logic and reasoning for my mythology writing. I would take a look at O1. It's the best one for complex logic and reasoning. I haven't done, like, I write a lot of books based on real world mythology and legends. I haven't done a lot of like creating my own mythology and things. That sounds like a really fun project. And so I would start with the O1 model, the most recent one. Play around with that, see if you can get anything. Give it as much information as you can. Otherwise, it's going to give you something very generic and the kind of thing that it might give anybody. If you give it more specific information about your world and your characters and whatever you know already about the world building, it'll be able to take that information and create something that's a little more unique and suited to your world specifically. All right. Can you create a new video about writing a novel only with Claude or ChatGPT? Yeah. Early next year, there will be videos on both of those models. Yep. I just filmed this morning. I just filmed a video that was how I plan on doing this video once a year. How to write a book with AI in 2025 is the title of the video that I filmed this morning. And it kind of goes through my best recommended process, which uses a combination of one chatbot and one specialist tool. And for demonstration purposes in the video, I used ChatGPT and Novel Crafter. But you could really use any of the chatbots or any of the specialized tools. But I also plan on creating a video that like how to do it with just Claude or just ChatGPT. Maybe even one with just Gemini, because they just released Gemini 2.0. I haven't even had a chance to sit down with that yet, but I hear great things. So I might do a video about that too. Oh, thank you, Guy. That's great. Love the kind words. I consume a lot of long form video content, and when I run out, I put stuff into Notebook LM, and that keeps me entertained. It's like a new form of entertainment. It's so cool, them talking about my words. Yeah, it is kind of cool. I think that's a really interesting thing. And 11 Labs has a feature like that now too. I need to do a video about that. For the person who asked about training llama locally, I've started to investigate that, and it's far from easy. Yeah, it's going to be a much more technical process, for sure. Okay, so this is a good question from Billy. I love your work, and you've paved the way for a lot of new authors, old and young. How do you deal with context windows? Do you split the book up into quarters to save space? I adore Claude for writing. Okay, this is the first thing I have to say about context windows. You do not need as much background information as you probably think you do. In fact, often the more you give Claude, like if you're giving it your whole book, the worse it will perform, because even though theoretically it should be able to comprehend your whole work, it actually ends up not really remembering everything all at once. Like it's hard to describe, but you're actually better off to turn your book into a story Bible, and then include the story Bible, which is much fewer words, but gives it more direct information about what is needed to give it context about your book. I did have a video where I talked about creating story Bibles in Novel Crafter. It's a little bit old now, but I think it's still usable. And there are tools coming out that will create story Bibles for you really quickly. That said, I don't even think you need that. All the AI needs to know is what comes next. So if you're writing the next 500 words of your book, all it needs to know is what is relevant for those 500 words. You got to think about it as being almost a blind ghostwriter, where you give it exactly what it needs to know in that moment. And it's not going to need to know your entire history of your world. It's not going to need to know even what happened in chapter 1 or 2 if you're writing chapter 10. It just needs to know, ideally, probably what happened in the last chapter is something I would get it. And I would give it information about the characters that are in that scene. It doesn't necessarily need to know anything else. It can get by without all of that knowledge, because it's not necessary for the next scene. And you got to also remember that you are the continuity editor. You must act in a continuity editor capacity as you were going through and validating the words that it just wrote. Usually, if it gets the continuity wrong, it's usually something that can be easily corrected by you in the moment. And then once you've done that, you just move on to the next step of the thing, and it's fine. So I think most people overestimate how much they need to give the AI for context. I think most, like what Novel Crafter does, where it gives you the last couple hundred words, as well as a summary of the book that's happened so far, as well as information about the characters, that's plenty. Even that might be too much. Like you could write a book without any context at all. All you're doing is just giving it the last couple of words that it wrote and then telling it what happens in the next couple of words. That's really at a basic level all you need. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, okay, so okay, so I can only afford either ChatGPT or Claude, hoping on advice for working with Claude on my original fiction, as it tends to refuse feedback in reviewing my own original prose. What would you suggest? Yeah, so depending on the spiciness or the violent level in your book, it might refuse to write a bunch of stuff. If that's frequently the case, I would actually recommend that you ditch those things entirely and go directly with, I would actually probably use Raptorite and use Open Router in Raptorite, or go to Open Router directly and use it as a chat bot. There's also a tool called Typing Mind, which is like a one-time fee, and then you connect it to Open Router. And yes, you're going to be paying as you go for the words that you're generating via Open Router in all of those tools I just mentioned. But chances are very good that the amount that you spend through Open Router as you go is going to be less than the $20 it costs for Claude or ChatGPT. The only disadvantage of doing it that way is that the tools are usually a little more complicated than doing it directly in ChatGPT or Claude. It's usually just easier to do it in there. There's a simplicity to ChatGPT and Claude, uh, but they're not actually necessarily the best way to go. And the big advantage of going directly through OpenRouter or one of these tools is that you have access to all of the different models. So you could switch between them as needed. So you could go with Claude for as long as you need Claude. But if you want to do something like a spicier scene or something like that, use one of the Mistral models, Mistral Nemo, or any of those, stuff like that are useful. How do you find beta readers? Facebook groups is where I'd start. Maybe talk to other authors in your same genre and see if they have people that you know. You can find paid beta readers as well. They're cheaper than editors, but you still have to pay them. You can usually find those on Fiverr or Upwork, one of those places. Yeah. So Secrets of Silvercloud says social media, Goodreads, BookFunnel. Aries Mars Express says with Claude, you want to work a scene at a time. Yep, I agree with that. Oh, what happened to Heirs of Dracula? Yeah, so this is a book that I wrote a year ago. It was about 50,000 words long. I wrote it with Claude 2 at the time and did a lot of editing to make it my own. First of all, let me say I haven't published a book in a while because there's a lot of work that goes into publishing books and marketing them, and I just can't afford the time to properly market the books that I'm releasing. So I have something like 4 books that are ready to go, and I just need to like figure out my strategy. And I have a strategy; it's going, but I'm just not ready to release them yet. So that's part of it. The other part of it is I decided I wanted to expand Heirs of Dracula. I wrote it using the 24 chapter novel outline by Derek Murphy. Derek's a friend; he's a great guy. I created my own 40 chapter novel, and I decided I wanted to not rewrite it entirely, but expand it to fit the 40 chapter model, so it could be a little bit more than I thought 50,000 words was too quick, and reading through it, it was moving too quickly for me. So I wanted to expand it to at least 80,000 words. So I've started that process, but it's not finished yet, and that's what's happening with Heirs of Dracula and what's holding that up. Yeah. One question, just use Claude Opus for spell checking and formatting. Took like $2 for checking through 1,000 words. Is there something wrong in my settings? It seems like a lot. No, Claude Opus is a expensive model. But here's the thing. The best editing models are the expensive ones, unfortunately. The best one is O1. If you want a good model, use O1. If it's simple proofreading, if you want something that will do it automatically for simple proofreading, I would actually recommend Edit GPT. I recently did a video about that, and it's decent for that sort of thing. Still some quirks, but it's good for that. And in the case of that, you can actually go through and see the changes that it's made, so you can approve them, so it doesn't accidentally change something too much. But O1, I would say, is the best model for editing, and it's more expensive. So yeah, you need to be careful with that. Hi, I'm from Nigeria. Can you do a full course video on writing fiction and nonfiction book from start to finish? Yeah, I just kind of did that. It's surface level, but it's enough. And I'll have more books on that, and I'll also have more videos about like how to write a book from start to finish in Novel Crafter or in Raptorwrite or in ChatGPT. There's going to be more videos like that coming soon. What is your favorite not safe for work model? So this one doesn't always work. So there is a slight level of censorship on it, but I really like Mistral Large 2 or the Pixtral Large 2, which allows you to also use images and stuff like that. If you give it the right context, like if it's writing a book and you're just getting to the next scene and you need the scene to be more spicy or something like that, it's usually good at doing that. If you just kind of like prompt it and say, hey, write a sex scene about this and that, it might reject that up front if you're being that kind of blunt and about it. But if it's got the context of the whole book and everything that you've been running, and it's a long, complicated prompt and everything, it's usually okay. And yeah, you can do that with ChatGPT and Claude. I've actually heard that the new O1 model inside of ChatGPT is actually better at, can do some like naughty stuff, because it's just it's better at recognizing the context and recognizing like, okay, this is a writer writing a scene, and it's able to understand that better than past models, which would just outright reject you. So give that a try. I haven't actually tested it for that. I've just heard that through the grapevine. But yeah, you can try that. That said, Mistral Large 2 is a decent enough model. Also, the new Muse model coming from Sudowrite is also really good at spiciness and is completely uncensored. So yeah, I would check that out. Let's see. Hermes is spicy, right? I'm not sure. I've tried Hermes. Claude 2 is still my low-key favorite ever model. Yeah, the nice thing about Claude 2 is very creative. But the problem with that is that it was really hard to get it to stick to your prompt. And Claude 3 and 3.5 are kind of the best of both worlds. They follow the prompt really well, and it's almost most of the time as good as what Claude 2 could do, but sometimes Claude 2 could give you some really good stuff. But it was rare and unpredictable, which I don't like. How much better is the current version of Claude for writing than what you used on your live stream to write a whole novel? It's better. And I don't use the super prompt method anymore that I was using in that case. So yeah, I'm probably going to do a series of live streams where I write like 3 different novellas using the 3 big specialist tools, Raptorite, Novel Crafter, and Sudowrite. And because I really want to try that out and really get some actual writing done with those models, because that's going to be the best way to properly judge between them about which ones I like the most. Alrighty. Unsure if you've talked about this before, but Sudowrite's taking 15 beats and doubled them when I generated the chapter prose. Why is that, and how can I edit or prevent this? I am not certain exactly what you mean. I haven't seen anything like that before, so I would reach out to Sudowrite support or in their Discord group. They're very responsive, and give them examples of what they are. And that's just a blanket rule. Just for any of these questions, I am not a support site for Novel Crafter or Sudowrite or any of these things. I can't necessarily help you troubleshoot errors, weird things that are happening. I'm more here to talk about strategy. Thank you, Ellie, for your kind words there. Sudowrite is meh for now. What do you think of the token rate limits in Claude? It's got so bad I can't prompt it any more than 30 times. Yeah, that's kind of normal and annoying. I would say if that's a problem, go through OpenRouter and just do it through the API, because you'll pay as you go, but you won't ever run into those things. And usually the amount you're paying is negligible. So that's what I do. Do you think you'll ever go write an entire novel or novella live with AI to see you go through the smaller editing decisions that are part of the process? Yeah, like I just said, I'm thinking of doing 3 novellas with the 3 biggest tools, so I can really test them out. I don't know if I'm going to be doing all of that live. I will probably do some of it live, but then just do some of it on my own, because you know, with YouTube, people can get oversaturated with content, and I don't necessarily, if it's all the same kind of content of just me writing the thing, I don't want to include more than just occasional examples of me writing it. Unless I were to start up a completely separate channel where the entire point of the channel is like live streams of me writing. So I've toyed with that idea. I don't know if I'm actually going to go through with that, but it's a possibility. Broke my heart when Claude 2.1 came out and broke the super prompt. That happened while I was writing the book last November. And it freaked me out at the time, because I was just like, I can't finish this book the way I've been doing it. Thankfully, they gave you the capacity to go back to Claude 2.0, and then 3.0 came out, and it was a lot better. And then I kind of like forgot about 2.1, But yeah, 2.1 came out and kind of messed everything up. What's a book you read recently that really impressed you? Ooh. Hang on, I've got my Kindle right here. I read a lot of books. Most of them are actually nonfiction these days, but I do keep reading a certain amount of fiction. The main book that I've been really enjoying recently, nonfiction book, is a biography of Peter Jackson. Surprisingly, let's see, what have I read recently? Yeah, as far as fiction books, there hasn't been much that that's really spoken to me lately. I've been just continuing to read more fantasy books, and those have all been enjoyable. I also read some classics. Like I just read the Epic of Gilgamesh. I was actually really impressed by the Epic of Gilgamesh. I never actually read it cover to cover. It's not that very long. I was familiar with it, but like I got to the end of it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like a really meaningful ending right here. And yeah, so probably not the answer you were expecting, but that's what I'd put. And also really enjoying the biography of Peter Jackson right now. As a nonfiction option. Also just got from my pre-orders, I just got book 5 of Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. I'm going to start that real soon. I'll come back in 2 years when I finished it. There is a fiction book that I read recently that I quite enjoyed. When I was at Author Nation, I got to meet Kevin J. Anderson in person. He's a masterful plotter. His prose is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but because it's not as deep point of view-ish. But he wrote this book called oh gosh, I got a physical copy, so I don't have it on my Kindle. Nether Station by Kevin J. Anderson. And it's kind of like a cosmic horror science fiction thing. And it was actually really, really good. It really drew me in and kind of kept me strung out throughout the book. And I could talk a lot more in deep detail about it. And I could tell you exactly why because thankfully my training is like clued me in. Oh, that's why I'm so engaged by this book. Kind of ruins the book sometimes. But I was still really enjoyed it. But basically, it kind of, at the beginning of the story, sort of mapped out all of the steps, because it was about the space station that spent 5 years traveling to get to this discovered wormhole. And they were going to just run a bunch of tests on the wormhole, and it was going to start out with like, they were going to send in a probe to see if it could come back. And then they were going to send in a probe with some rats on it and see if it would come back and see how it affected the rats. And then they were going to move up to an ape and come back, and then they would put a human test. And so it had like these steps mapped out. And so the whole time throughout the book, I was just like, oh, we got to get to this next step. And while that's happening, lots of things are going wrong because it's like a cosmic horror. All kinds of things are breaking down, and weird stuff is happening. And so that combined with the steps really sold it for me. So yeah, that was a good, if you like cosmic horror. I'm one of those people that I'm a very positive, upbeat person in real life. So I don't know why, but I really like cosmic horror. It's the only branch of horror that I actually genuinely like. And actually makes some appearances in my own books and my universe as well. Now granted, in my universe, it's not quite as cosmic horror as real cosmic horror is, where it's like true despair and nothing can ever be done kind of a thing. But in my version, it's more like, no, we've got heroes, we can fight this. It's more of an adventure with really, really dark cosmic horror beings as your villains. So I don't know why I'm like such a fan of cosmic horror when I am the kind of person that I am, but for some reason it's fine. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Ellie. So Ellie says, I hadn't thought about that, but it makes sense. Your current audience is used to one type of content, so the live writing might not suit them. Yeah. And actually, you'd be surprised at how much this is a thing you have to pay attention to when doing YouTube. Like you could say, if you wanted to do a YouTube channel about Thai food, well, what kind of a channel about Thai food? Because you could have a channel about making Thai food recipes. You could have a channel about sampling Thai food around the world, like a travel food channel. You could have a channel that's just like people eating Thai food. Believe it or not, there are channels out there where it's like they're close up to the microphone. It's like an ASMR sort of thing where they're just eating food, and you could have one about Thai food. You could have one about all kinds of different things. And believe it or not, the viewing behavior of all of those different channels would be different. They'd be completely different audiences, even though it's all technically about Thai food. So that's the thing about channels. So that's why I'm hesitant to do like tons of live writing content on this channel, because I think I would almost alienate and confuse the algorithm a little bit with my current audience. So I would almost consider, I could do some, like here's a sample of my writing doing this thing. But I think also it might be a better idea to have a second channel where like this is where I do my writing. So who knows? What is a movie or series that you watched recently that you liked? Okay, I have an answer to this one. Now I haven't watched it too recently, but the second season is coming soon, so I think it's appropriate to talk about it. But the first season of Severance on Apple TV Plus is the first TV series I've watched in years where I could not wait to watch the next episode. Where I was just so sucked in, like I was so engaged, and there's actually elements of maybe not cosmic horror, but like weird kind of horror elements in that show. So maybe this is a trend, but that show sucked me in like nothing has ever done for like over a decade. So I would check that show. In fact, most of the good shows that have really engaged me in the last little while have actually surprisingly come from Apple TV Plus. It's not the streaming service that I expected to have such like good high quality writing, but many of the channels do. Like there's an animated show I let my daughter watch called Stillwater, which is like a Zen mindfulness show packaged as a little kid show. And like I watched a couple episodes with her, and I was just like, I went to my wife and I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, she can watch as much of this as she wants. Like it's good stuff. Severance second season comes out soon, and I cannot wait for that. All right. Tolkien was influenced by Gilgamesh. Yes, he was. Which book did you like writing the most? Ooh, my own books. That's a tough one. I think most authors would say whichever one I'm working on right now. I would probably say the first book in my Fairy Queen series called Path of the Dragon. I had just finished my 8-book Roots of Creation series and was a much better writer. And that was a book I'd been planning on writing forever, and it was just a joy for me to write. So I'd probably say that. I got a little stuck on the subsequent books after that. And it became a real slog. And that's when I ran into burnout, by the way, was around book 3 of that series. But the first book was actually really enjoyable to write. There's a dragon in it at the end. Climbing Olympus, the book you're thinking of with Kevin J. Anderson? No, it's called Nether Station. Nether, Nether. Have you read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark? No, unfortunately, I have not. Miniature painters have YouTube content on painting techniques and do live streams, painting sessions on Twitch. Yeah, so that would essentially be the idea. I would do live writing sessions. I would probably co-stream on both Twitch and YouTube, because I think you can do that now. I'd have to figure out the technicalities of that, but yeah. For All Mankind on Apple TV, yes, I've watched that. That's another really good series. Didn't engage me as much as Severance or some of the others. Silo is another really good one based on a self-published novel, by the way. Yeah, okay, so there's some love for Apple TV in there being kind of underrated. Yeah, I agree. There's lots of surprisingly good stuff in there. I know that a lot of people recommend that show Shrinking, I think, with Harrison Ford is in it. It's not my genre, so I watched a couple of episodes. So like, this is not for me, but it gets a lot of good reviews. What are your favorite 3 fiction books? That's not a question I could possibly answer. And Debbie also reminded me that we've been here for 2 hours. Yes, we have, and I should probably go at noon here Eastern time. So yeah. So get in your final questions. I'll answer this. So 3 favorite fiction books. I can't give you 3 specific books. I can give you my 3 favorite franchises, because I'm a franchise, but I'm a big nerd, right? A nerdy novelist. Who knew? But my 3 favorite franchises are represented by these right over here, and you probably can't see them too well, but down here is Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. That's favorite franchise number 1, which is Star Wars, of course. Here in the back, this is Elendil's helmet from the Lord of the Rings films. Elendil, you'll see him in the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring. It's just a really cool Gondorian helmet, and so I got that, and I just recently used it in some advertising that I was filming, and for my fantasy books. So I can write that off as a business expense. I've been using it in my advertising. And then in the middle is a model of the USS Enterprise D from the Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so that's my 3rd favorite franchise is Star Trek. If I were to continue, I'd say Brandon Sanderson's overall Cosmere is probably number 4. And DC Comics, everything related, Batman, Superman, that whole world is probably number 5. Marvel used to be a little higher, but I just never really cared too much for Marvel, although I am a big Spider-Man fan. Just finished replaying the first 2 Spider-Man games from that are on PlayStation. I played them on PC. The first one about main Spider-Man, and then the second one about Miles Morales. Those are great games. I just love them. Closest thing to perfect games that I've ever played, and super addictive, which might be why I like them. But yeah, I wouldn't even put Marvel, maybe even, it might be my top 10, but farther down. Also, strangely, not a huge Harry Potter fan. Like, I don't mind it. I know people are obsessed with it. I've read the books more than once, but that's like the extent of it. I'm not out there to watch the next Fantastic Beasts film on opening day or anything like that. Have you read Six of Crows duology? Yes, but I don't remember them, so might as well be a no. I've read a lot of books, but honestly, I don't think these days I read more nonfiction than fiction, which is a shame. But here's the thing: when you're in a world with so much good content, it's a good thing and a bad thing. You can get overly saturated and lose yourself in it. I prefer to find the people that I like the most and then go deep with those people. So like the top 5 franchises that I just mentioned, I will read or watch everything that comes out in those franchises because I just like them. But what? No Twilight? Yeah, sorry. But like the amount of bandwidth I can afford to new things these days, and maybe this is just the reality of getting older, is less than it used to be, unfortunately. And I would rather be writing more, and for my own entertainment, focus more on the highest quality people or the people that I like the most, because that's going to serve my writing better. So that's my philosophy on that. Any particular reason for the focus on nonfiction? Just a desire for personal improvement. I consider that to be that kind of obsession being the reason why I've become successful. So I read a lot of books about writing. I read a lot of books about business and entrepreneurship. I read a lot of books about self-improvement, because in order to be successful in life, you have to improve yourself first. There's a guy named Jim Rohn who said something, and I'm paraphrasing here, but said something to the effect of, success is not something you achieve. Success is something you attract by the person you become. So you have to become a person that is like a successful person. And then once you've become that type of a person, then success just comes to you. And I found that to be true in my own life. The more I work on myself, the more success just kind of flows. And I'll speak from a health perspective as well. I went through a period of time where I was doing really well on my health for like a period of 6 months. And I had more success with my business in those 6 months than I had in the previous 6 years. So working on yourself is a key important thing. And so that's what most of my nonfiction is about. I do occasionally read biographies, like right now I'm doing Peter Jackson, but they're usually biographies of famous people in the storytelling world, so I can learn from them. So all my favorites, George Lucas, Stan Lee, J.R.R. Tolkien, Brandon Sanderson. Actually, I got a bunch of them here on my wall. Mary Shelley. Did I say George Lucas? William Shakespeare. A couple of others, and then Peter Jackson, Steven Spielberg. I read biographies of those kind of people, and that's the majority of the nonfiction that I read. And I intend to read and want to read more of that these days. Cool. Think and Grow Rich, always a classic. I think that'll about wrap it up. Been here for 2 hours. Thanks again for coming here and for asking your amazing questions. I should probably do more Q&As, like dedicated Q&As like this from time to time. Maybe we'll make it like a monthly or bi-monthly thing, or like every other month, I mean. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for being subscribers. One of the 50,000 of you, like all of you guys, thank you so very much. And let's bring a friend and let's get to 100,000. Let's do it. Let's get that silver play button. So thanks again, and I will see you next week and whatever the next